of what happens around crime issues is the big issue we had, bike theft was one, but the big issue we had the year before that was robberies of people for their cell phones, right? Snatch and grabs, you're on your phone, you set it on the table, someone comes and grabs. A lot of those, and some quite violent, right? So the DA spent about a year really fighting with the phone manufacturers and all of the carriers to say, you need to put a kill switch in the phone so that when it's stolen, somebody can make it useless. So it's a paperweight, not a $500 technological advice that they can go to 6th and Market and sell. And that was a gigantic fight. I mean, everybody told us, you cannot do it. There's no way to do it. And we just refused to accept that. I'm like, you know, the very few things we deal with in our world have a technological solution to them. This is one of them, and we'll be damned if we're not going to pursue it to the ends of the earth. Because if you can stop a violent crime from happening, I mean, you have people get punched in the face, pushed off the bus, like scary things. If we can stop that for somebody, if we can avoid that from ever happening, that's the best job a DA can do, right? Like, you never have to be a victim of a crime. We've won on every measure. So
did that work?
It worked, yes. So
what's the stats now?
Now everybody breaks into cars, but they stopped stealing phones. You know, is sort of the truth of the matter.
But when you see a change like that, you see an automatic change in behavior too.
Yeah, not automatic, I mean, not like the next day, but over like 3 or 4 month period, you see that, correct? Robbery was our big crime, 2013, and then we see that start to dip down the ends of 13, beginning of 14, and then we see auto burglary pick up, because there's some people that are like, I don't have a legal job, I don't have legitimate income, I find ways to prey on opportunities, right? Those are the people we want to find.
What do you think is next?
I don't know. I think we're going to be in this one for a little while. The problem we're having, and the conversation we've been having with the police department, is the arrest rate is about 2% on those break-ins to cars. That's really low, right? If you've got a 98% chance of getting away with it, that feels like really good odds, right? So you're like, I'm going again, and today I'm on Polk, and here I go, right? So we're really trying to work with them on ways to improve their ability to catch people in the act and make sure that we're catching the folks that we're most concerned about. I think that will start to change that behavior, but if we don't get there, I think we're going to be in this moment for a little while because it's successful, right? And that doesn't change until it no longer works. So we've got to figure out how to shut that down.
Please,
I'm sure you work on like so many cases and you see it throughout the day. I want to know if there's a specific case that comes to mind that just really shook you or the DA's department.
The question is, what's the most
impactful
case that you've dealt with?
It's hard to pick one, but one we're dealing with right now is there's a mother that was murdered and her 2-year-old child is missing. If you've seen it on social media or Facebook, you should share it because we haven't found the little girl yet. We see stuff like that all the time, unfortunately. I think it's hard as a woman to see how much women suffer in their homes and on the street in ways that are profound, and some of the sort of ugliest sides of humanity, you see there. And those are the things we're dedicated to spending every day on, right? Ironically, the punishments around some of those are not what you would expect them to be, and punishments on other things are quite high. And I think that's where the work is, right? There's still a statute of limitations on a sexual assault or on a child molestation, right? And most victims are unlikely to, in the very early years after having been a victim of those crimes, to come forward. And so how do we start to change those laws on the state level so that we locally can bring more victims the opportunity to heal and recover from those victimizations? But unfortunately, there's a lot of them.
Cristine, to follow up to Vita's question, when you go home at night, when you go to sleep, does this bother you at night? Do you stay up at night because of your cases, or do you block it out somehow?
No. Some days, are like in any office, but
what keeps you up at night?
A couple things keep me up at night. People hurting, really, it has a huge impact on me emotionally. My husband will say, that job of yours is crazy. But I think about that 2-year-old almost every night. I have little kids, and I think about, where is she? Is somebody hurting her? Like, where could she be right now? What can I do? You know, is there more we can be doing to find her? That worries me, and I feel obligation to help. We just had a big case that you may have read in the paper where we had a guy that was pimping young women, 14, 16-year-olds. And the woman in our office was working on it for a long time, and then in the news articles where I read what hotel it was happening at, and I drive by the hotel every day on my way home, and now, I'm not exaggerating to tell you, every day when I drive by that hotel, I think, what young woman is in there right now being taken advantage of, being forced to do things she doesn't want to do? And I feel like an urge to go like run and knock on the doors of the hotel and be like, let them out, who's in here, you know, and because you hear about some of the horrible things that people are doing. So that's hard. It's hard to compartmentalize some of that. I intentionally don't look at some cases and the evidence in some cases because it's hard to let it leave your mind once you see it. Things with kids, and so I won't let that in. And then the other thing that keeps me up is making sure that I'm making the system better, right? Like, I came to this job, I think a lot of people come to this job to make things better. And I think in my role, the obligation to do that is to leave behind structures that were better than the ones I came into the job with, right? So we're doing a lot of work around police reform right now, and I lose sleep over thinking, I can be compelling in my role, or Dia Gascon can be compelling in his role, but we'll be gone. And what will be left behind, and will it be enough to sustain a DA's office and a police department running to the highest principles that we have, or will it evolve back, fall back to something else?
One thing I would fear is that the San Francisco I came to was very socially conscious, and social justice was the DNA of the city.
Yeah.
As the city becomes looking more like Manhattan now versus Manhattan 50 years ago, I start to wonder if, when you're saying a transfer of leadership eventually will happen, when you came into this, the community was very passionate about these things. If the community starts to become more corporate, their issues change. So how do you feel, what's going to happen in your mind with the demographic shifts in the city, and how will that be reflected in the leadership?
I think that's real. I want to think that people are drawn to San Francisco because they care about those issues, even if their own social location doesn't suggest you would be a champion of social justice. And I think that is in the hearts of a lot of people, even if they're newcomers here. And I hope that people will take on that charge, right? Because everyone should care about police violence or racism in the police department or young women that are being taken advantage of, even if they're young and poor and may have originally said they were okay with it, right? We all need to have a level of consciousness around those things to have the kind of city we want, right? The heart of San Francisco is that, and it's no magic thing that people of color possess. It's just a concern and a commitment to making sure everybody's got the same access, right? And so I think we can preserve that, and I think we can invite people to join in that, right?
Creighton, go for it.
I'm curious if pitching like via email is important to you to get advocacy and awareness around your ideas, like the breaking conversation that was everywhere 3 years ago. Were you guys like emailing SF Chronicle editors like the surprising truth behind, you can stop so many crimes, read more below?
Right.
What do you guys?
Okay, so to rephrase for the camera, Creighton. First of all, Creighton's a mad beat maker. So for any future criminal justice PSAs, he's got some fat beats.
I wish I did.
Just want to let you know about that. 2, his question is really about the granularity of how you do your PR outreach around some of these famous campaigns. Did you use email? Did you use attachments of photos? Did you leak things? Do you have friendlies? Of course you probably have friendlies. Do you give exclusives? How did you create such momentum and buzz?
Yeah.
Like, just specific and granularity matters for us.
Yeah.
Like the little things about how you did it is what I think you're asking about.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it varies. So, something like the cell phone issue is like it's a David and Goliath fight kind of set up for you, right? Like we didn't set out to do that. We honestly called AT&T and we're like, hey, we're sure you care about this as much as we do. And they were like, not not really. Go away. And we're like, oh my God, they don't really care. We thought they really, honestly, maybe apparently naively thought.
In the commercials, they're really nice.
They wouldn't want that to happen to their customers, but it appeared that that was not as compelling for them. So that one lent itself, and it's such a national issue. It was happening in New York. It was happening here. It had a little name attached to it, right? People calling it apple picking. So there were enough
Ooh,
little
apple picking, that's good.
Yeah.
Who made that up?
Not
You just
us.
ran with it?
No,
Okay,
no.
that's good.
Yeah,
No,
someone
that's
came
good.
up with it.
Okay, sorry.
So it had enough hooks in it on its own that it. I mean, we did the work obviously of like pushing it out there, but it the issue helped itself and the parties in the fight. On things we have that are less like that, because that's maybe. That one went really well, but things where there's something we care about and we're not sure anybody else will care about, we spend a fair amount of time trying to educate reporters about an issue and why they might care about it, right? If it's a particular case, like a human trafficking case that before 3 years ago nobody was talking about, right? How do we now make a journalist care? We try to figure out who cares about an issue already on their own. Is it something they've written about before? Or are they a mom?
How big is your PR
Are
team?
they 2?
Okay, they're researching this stuff. They're finding the reporter. They're finding the people.
Well, you know,
that
for
care.
us, it doesn't change that much. I don't know if it changes for you, but most of our news is San Francisco news, right? So we deal with the same outlets over and over again.
Do you
but
email them, or do you have to have copies? What do you do? Like, do you demos?
They do different things. So, like for instance, when a new reporter will come into the Chronicle that is going to work our beats, yeah, we get to know them, right? We take them to coffee, ask them what they care about, try to figure out, you know, what are the things you're interested in.
What do you do with a hater? How do you do it like that person? By the way, I'll just bring this up. When my wife was at a certain company, this is maybe on video, there was like this hater. It's like this one hater, and we're always like, how do we deal with this hater?
Yeah.
How do you guys do that?
Yeah. Well, some
Do you
of
ignore
it
them?
just, yes, as much as you can.
Okay, don't give them information.
Well, then you look maybe at doing an exclusive with somebody you prefer,
Okay.
right? You know, and then the story is less interesting for everybody else once it breaks with somebody. Sometimes we do that based on who we like. Sometimes we do that on what format is going to work better, right? Do we want a longer, more in-depth format like the Atlantic and the New York Times is more likely to do, or do we just need a little like poof couple paragraphs that the Chronicle or the Examiner or somebody else can cover for us? So it depends a little bit on all of those things, but we try to win people over as much as we can. You know, I mean, they don't go away that often.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, most people, I mean, generally that's not true because it's so poorly paid, it does churn over, but you know, they're around, or they'll go to another outlet, and so you don't really we try not to create any enemies. We don't come into it with the intention of having any enemies.
Right.
Some people just have a point of view that's different than ours, and it happens to us every single time, right? Somebody writes a story, and we're, you know, around the police reform stuff, everybody has been saying, oh, this is a Greg Sir versus George Gascon personal fight. We're like, what are you talking about? It's not like they stole each other's girlfriend, or it's about principles, right? But it's an easier story to write, and it's like sells more local newspapers to be like, ooh, 2 local visible people in the community are fighting, you know. But it's never been personal. It's never been about politics. But that's the way some people want to write the story, and we fight against it. And we push back. And we're like, that's not it. You're losing. I think what matters to people don't care about like us tiffing. But we're tipping about something that matters, right? Like when George was in Arizona, he got in a huge fight with Joe Arpaio over immigration. He didn't like the guy, but nobody wrote the story like, oh, these 2 guys don't like each other, because it was like, clearly that guy's anti-immigrant, this guy is pro-immigrant. That's what they're fighting about. Here it's like, we disagree with not having accountability on that kind of behavior in policing, and that's what we're fighting for.